So look, this is obviously very informal. I'm really happy for people to jump in if you've got any questions or comments. And really what I wanted to do was kind of talk a little bit about some of the magic we create, and people often do refer to it as magic. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. So kind of just very quickly talk to you about who we are, and that was covered off very well, thank you. But we're a creative tech studio, and essentially we create awe-inspiring experiences. So for us, it's all about creating that human engagement and connection with experiences, exactly that. We use, a lot of tech, a lot of new technology, but what we create isn't just technology for tech's sake, basically. There's always a story, there's objectives, there's a link into why, for an organization, this is important, an important part of how they tell their story. So we basically bring those stories to life. And so through that, we're strategic. We think about the problem, we look at the objectives, we look at your audience, what are we trying to do? Bring that together with great art and design and great tech to essentially tell your story. So at the end of the day, we're really great storytellers. And it just so happens that we deliver that through creative technology. We see that as just a medium, essentially. And so today, really, we just wanted to touch on augmented reality, which is just a part of some of the work that we do. We work a lot in, in new media. As I mentioned, we do a lot of exhibitions for museums, and that can involve everything from just what you would call traditional exhibitions where there's design elements, but we do a lot of interactive work, games, augmented reality, virtual reality, kiosk-based content, web, which sits in there as well, but a lot more interactive and immersive content. And really just, I guess for us, again, it's got to have that human connection and engagement. How can we get people excited and create some awe, and the emotion that we get isn't necessarily always a good one. I guess the thing is, it's about making people think and making them feel. So augmented reality. What is augmented reality? And there's a little picture there on the side of Pokemon Go, because that is still the best example 4 or 5 years later of augmented reality done in a way that people have understood it, because augmented reality has been around for a very long time, but it wasn't until Pokemon Go made it really easy for just everyone to get it that people started to understand. And so augmented reality is really, it's about augmenting your reality. It's the real world overlaid with virtual objects. So the difference between that and virtual reality is I've actually got a headset here, but I won't put it on, is you're going into a completely different world. You've got the headset on, and essentially you're at one with the experience that you're in. Whereas augmented reality is typically seen through a device, a phone or a tablet, and shows you the real world with items placed on top, very much like Pokemon Go. And so I kind of wanted to touch on a couple of projects that we've done. One that's about 2.5, 3 years old that we did for Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei here in Auckland. They're an Auckland-based iwi, and all about bringing culture and history to life, essentially. And this was something we'd been wanting to do. We'd pitched a high-level idea to a few companies, a few years ago, and people were just not fully on board. But I think there's always a bit of a risk when you're doing new tech. There's only, New Zealand audiences are small, so if you're spending that money, how best can you get a wider audience, best bang for buck? And so sometimes the risk with doing new technology is a little bit too high. But Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei really wanted to do something quite different. One of the things, in the talks with them was essentially, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Bastion Point up in Auckland, and essentially it's up in Ōrākei. It's a beautiful space, but it's very much recognised for this obelisk, that's dedicated to the Michael Savage. So it's a Michael Savage memorial, and there's no link in here to the fact that Māori own the land and the rich history and stories that go with Bastion Point. There's a lot of negative history as well around it, but there were stories to be told, and essentially they wanted to tell the stories, but in a very sustainable way. you know, what could we do? We didn't want to put something down that acted like a museum. We didn't want to put any structures down. What can we do to bring the story to life? So augmented reality seemed like a really great way to look at this. So one of the things they did was a couple of walking tours where they took people and tourists through a walking tour that was a little bit behind the scenes. So about 500,000 people, typically, maybe not this year, visit Bastion Point. A lot of international tourists, a lot of locals, and that's quite a massive amount. And to imagine that many people going through a space and not really knowing the connection that Māori have to it and the history and stories behind it. So how could we bring that to the fore? And how could we capitalize on that a little bit? You know, how could we capitalize on the 500,000 people that are going there? So they had some walking tours, hikoi, where some of the iwi would take you around, show a bit of behind the scenes. There were flora and fauna you could discover, you know, as they took you around to the marae, show the community gardens, all of that. Now, to get to that stage, we thought there was a really great opportunity to kind of get people sort of a bit closer to that, because it was very much a tour that was organized. You know, people had to dig a bit deeper to find it. What could we do at a surface level? And so they had a lot of great stories, and we wanted to take it away from the negative side of it as well. So what I want to show you next is essentially a video that showcases where it's gone, and then talk a little bit about our process with how we worked with them. So hopefully this works. It's great because it's my computer. I don't have to rely on another screen.
Ka hura te tira maka o Ngāti Whātua. Ka hura te manawa uha. Unuhanga te mauri o roto ki te whaia.
So in working with them, a lot of what we did was actually to spend time with the iwi, with people who are representing, who are part of this project. We did a few workshops where we just grilled them basically in all the stories. So a lot of Māori history and stories are oral only, you know, so they're being told generations down. There's not, we were like, is there anything we can refer to? Can we go and read up by ourselves? But the best thing was just to listen to them talk. And it was amazing, you know. Every time we went for an hour meeting, we were there for a couple of hours and really just listening to these beautiful stories coming through. And so those formed our, what could we do with this content? And so the idea came about that we create a walking tour through this app of 4 hotspots, 4 key points, you know, north, south, east, west. And essentially as you went around to each point, an experience appeared. And it's hard to show you in here, but you saw a little bit in the video of once you're in the app, and it is an app because that's the best way and was the best way to experience augmented reality. There are new ways, and I will show you another example shortly. And essentially you downloaded the app, and through the app, it showcased you the 4 hotspots, and then you could do a tour, like start the experience, and basically showed you a wayfinding way to get through to the hotspot. So it was a bit linear. You had to go through one spot first, complete that next one. And the way we created that was a little bit gamified. When you got to each hotspot, you had to interact with the 3 pieces of content, and then it would prompt you to go to the next hotspot. And so the first one is you go into Bastion Point. First spot looks over down at Kohimarama Beach. So we did an experience, we did some 360 footage of the beach itself. We then went and took footage on green screen of some of the iwi, sort of reenacting carving of waka, which you might have seen a little bit in the video. I'm not sure if it was in that video. And essentially, and also created a 3D waka And basically what we did is we composited within the 360 scene. So the 360 video that we took of the real life Koihi Marama now had a lot of traffic, had a lot of people. So we took some of them out, and then we put our green screen footage of our reenactment of two Māori tribe people, essentially carving a waka, and then the 3D waka in the background and the Waitemata on the water. And so that all came together really nicely. So the idea was when you got to that spot, you held up your phone, played the video, and essentially you could do a 360 and it showed you like you were on the beach and viewing that itself. And then through the content, we also had, and I don't know if you guys can see this down here, so the play enabled the content to be brought to life, whether that was video or augmented reality. And then the information button was an option to look at 4 different native birds that we featured. And so the kahu was one of them. That's a kahu pokore, which is the Ngāti Whātua Oraki's kaitiaki, so guardian bird. And basically got to just learn a little bit, you know, not just their history and the stories, a little bit about our native birds. And then the photo gallery showed you some of the old pictures from the area. So it was just a really, really nice experience. This was sort of our landing page. So it was beautifully designed, beautifully designed as well, you know, to showcase how that might work. It's available now to download. So if you get a chance to go up to Bastion Point, you want to go for a walk, please go and do it on a nice day. It's really, you know, it's a really nice experience. It's about 20 minutes, I would say, by the time you've walked and experienced it all. And so some of the other content we did, so the second spot, and I love this, was showcasing, we talked, you know, the narrative talks about Rangitoto and the Waitemata Harbour. And it was really interesting because when you're standing, you're literally standing about here facing out towards Rangitoto. And we had a couple of tourists. We had a couple of tourists try this on one of our trials, and they're holding the phone up, and we had this eruption, you know, showing how Rangitoto erupted. But because it literally looks like it's your camera, look, and you can see Rangitoto in front of you, they freaked out slightly and just went, I'm just making sure that it's not actually erupting. Of course, us Aucklanders know better, but it was just really, really interesting to see how real it felt. That they actually had to take a second look. So really great experience. You can see here how we superimpose. So these guys were filmed on green screen. The marae was filmed 360 video. This kahu is actually a 3D bird that we put in, and how we've composited all of that to bring it to life on the phone. Now there's the kind of good thing with that is that it is on a phone, so we can probably be forgiven a little bit that it's not ultra detailed. We wouldn't be able to probably get this into a movie, but you know, what you can see on the phone comes through really, really nicely, and it all just fits together really nicely. There was also in there sort of wayfinding in terms of showing names and, you know, where items were. So one of the scenes here shows a couple of lighthouses on the water, so you can locate them by yourself. And just some really great things for both kids and adults, really, to get into, find a little bit of history. There's a little bit of sort of inside information in this. So we're really just bringing those stories to life. What can we do to keep people engaged, interested to take the next, you know, go to the next hotspot, to the next one. The third hotspot showcase flora and fauna in augmented reality in front of you. And I haven't shown that here. Oh, sort of like this that you see with the pukeko. So there were some trees and plants that came in because Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei have a regeneration project. And so they're bringing back a lot of the native plants. And in turn, that was bringing back a lot of the native birds and insects. So really, really great story. We showed some of the plants in augmented reality in front of you, similar to how you see this bird. And then on them hotspots, you could find out about each of the plants. In each scene, there was a bird either in the scene or just beforehand. There was a portal that you could go into. Just so, again, this bird linked with the information. So the kahu that you saw in this next screen, which was them essentially doing an introduction to the marae, the information you could find out about the kahu as well. So just a really beautiful experience, really, really well received, and tourists, you know, just absolutely loved it. Sorry, I'm just jumping ahead. But essentially the potential of where that can go. So for us specifically, we've we've looked at creating something similar for quite a few other organizations. And the amount of interest that we've had off the back of this, we're looking at creating, we're actually in the middle of creating a platform where people can create their own tours and go through and create, essentially, I mean, maybe not at this level, but a walking tour and the sort of content that might be available. Instead of having a whole lot of different apps, I guess, that do, you know, individual tours. So that's that example there. I'm not sure if you want to do questions now, if I keep going and then we can come back to do questions. Should I keep going?
Yeah, sorry, I think you just keep going and then we have the questions in the end. I am already
cool.
writing down some questions, but...
No, absolutely. And so that was an example of an app-based augmented reality experience. Throughout lockdown, we also, we were in the middle of working on our own platform for web augmented reality. So up until really earlier this year, web augmented reality has really been in its infancy, in that you can go to a browser and enable augmented reality through a browser instead of downloading an app. And the problem's mainly been in that a browser has certain fidelity. You just can't load lots of content through your phone. Your phone's a hard drive. And so, and also the browsers themselves haven't been up to scratch. And so this year, earlier this year, we've seen them just catching up. And so we started developing a product around web augmented reality, because we know part of the biggest issue with augmented reality has been the fact that you have to create an app. You know, there's another app that you have to create. So if the content isn't going to be long lasting, if it doesn't add long-term value, why am I creating an app? That's always a question that people would have. And we would also go back to clients and go, if you want to do augmented reality, you need to make sure that there's a really good reason to download an app and for us to create that content. Otherwise, it becomes very gimmicky. And also, you know, people have got a mental sort of, I don't want to download another app. Even if it's free and it's literally just sitting on your phone, the thought of having to delete it later on or to remember to delete it later on, you know, mentally, I think overcomes people. So web augmented reality, and essentially we're creating a platform where at the moment the platform is ready. We're essentially launching content for clients on their behalf and creating the content for them. And it's about how can we get browser-based augmented reality working. We went into lockdown, and one of the first things that came to our minds was how can we keep everyone still feeling like they're connected, having fun. We know there was a little bit, you know, it was very much, it was a strange time. There was this like blanket of just black sitting over everyone, you know, not depression, but everyone was kind of like, what is the state that we're in? We're all feeling just down, and you know, everything was looking really different. How can we bring some joy back to the world? So Easter was coming up, and I think this was late March, obviously late March, that we went, what can we do to showcase something we're doing, but also really bring some joy to everyone, because we'd love to do that. And so we came up with this idea to do an augmented reality Easter egg hunt using our new platform Matter, which is a web AR platform. And within 2 weeks, we launched this campaign. So high level, and it's still live, so you can actually still go and test it. So if you've got some kids, or if you just want to draw some Easter eggs yourself, you're more than welcome to go out and test it. It's really fun. You don't need to download an app, but essentially it's the idea behind it is that so it's an Easter egg treasure hunt. There's a website, greatindoor-easter-egg-hunt.com. And you went to there, and it basically had instructions for kids and instructions for adults, which was essentially kids go and draw your Easter eggs, cut them out, color them in, give them to your parents to hide. And parents were given a set of instructions on where they had to hide their Easter eggs. Otherwise the whole thing fell over if parents didn't follow the instructions. And then give your phone over to your kid, which is probably the biggest risk there, and let them go on a treasure hunt. And so the first clue was, I think was the kids' bedroom drawers. And so what happened essentially is when kids found the Easter egg, they used the browser-based instructions to initiate augmented reality from the egg. And I'll show you a little video soon to explain all of that, because it's probably sounding very confusing. So what we did is, it's all browser based. You go to a website. So the first website you go to is the Great Indoor Easter Egg Hunt, tells you all the instructions. From there, it says start the hunt, goes over to our Meta platform. You don't know the difference, and essentially says, are you ready to start the hunt? Find your first Easter egg. Find the Easter egg, and then basically came up with a tracker. What we did is we created something that uses both augmented reality and Google Cloud Vision. So the Google Cloud Vision is there to recognize an Easter egg shape, and then to create an animation, to run an animation basically. So we built it in to essentially recognize anything from circles to Easter egg shapes, just in case the kids were a bit younger and they didn't know how to draw the Easter egg shape. And you go through, you do that, and a little animation comes up. We did it in a like a clue based. There's basically a little bunny comes up with each one. Actually, the bunny's hidden, and you're finding the bunny. And so there are 5 clues. Each animation tells you where to look next. So the first one, when you find the Easter egg in the kids' drawers, you run the animation. It basically has a little poem rhyme that tells you to look in the dunny. In the bathroom, you go there, you find the next Easter egg, and it tells you to go look in the kitchen. And in each one, the bunny's hidden. And so you're seeing the feet of the bunny, you're seeing the ears of the bunny, or you're seeing the butt of the bunny, the little tail. And then finally on the 5th one, when you found the bunny, which is on the kid's bedroom, on the bed, on the Easter egg, and he comes out with a basket of Easter eggs. So really, really fun. You know, a few seconds of fun, I'd say, but the great thing was also that link from physical and digital. So the kids actually drawing and cutting out their Easter eggs, the parents hiding them, getting them involved, and then the digital bringing it to life. And I really, really love, with everything that we do, that connection with people, with place, with real stuff, and such a magical experience. I'll show you very quickly here a little video that we used. It's a very quick video. Of course, we used toilet paper because that was all the rage, you know. And then there was a little poem that that came out, and the next one. So yeah, so that was created on our Meta platform, and the idea is that we can now create interactive augmented reality experiences that can be viewed directly on your browser. And we create an experience, have a link, meta.io. This one was meta.io/Easter. You run everything through your browser, close it, you're done, no app needed. So if you do get a chance, go and check out the Easter egg hunt. And that is essentially me. There's some social media stuff which I sometimes use, is currently very very political, so maybe don't follow my one. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Sam. Thanks for sharing. And I guess we can just jump straight into a question and answer. We're not so many people, so probably people can just actually unmute themselves, or if they want to raise their hands, so it's not overlapping, but I think it's not that many people, so we can probably manage. Just, oh, okay, there was already a raised hand, so maybe Aruna wants to ask the first question.
Yeah, I do have a question. Yes, Sam, that was fantastic. That was really, really interesting. I was fascinated by the creativity and the interactive part. I have 2 questions. One is, what is the sort of average length of time it takes to build something from brief to the final product?
Look, it really always depends, and it depends on the size of a project. Like the Easter campaign, as I mentioned, we essentially the idea happened in the so we went into lockdown on the 22nd, I think it was. The following week, we had an ideas board actually, because we were like, what can we do that would be fun and keep us busy, all of that. And essentially the idea came up that week, and we started that week, and within 2 weeks we'd launched. But that was our own idea. It wasn't a massive campaign, you know, it was a small one. So that's an example, but that's also web augmented reality does give you a bit more flexibility in terms of timing, whereas developing an app means you have to go through the shops. All of that also just has time, you know, and Apple used to be really, like, they used to take ages approving apps. It's a lot better now, but you still have to go through an approval process if there's something there they don't like. So the Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei one was about 6 months, but a lot of that was the workshops, so all of the content that we created, getting the stories and the script from the client. We did 3 language versions of the app, so English, Māori, and Chinese as well. So that was all recorded, written, translated. And so there was a lot more going back and forth on that one. And probably for something like that, I mean, we could have said 4 months would have been okay. So the 6 months, it dragged out a little bit, but not massively. And then development time in there. So, and sometimes our process isn't linear. So essentially in the beginning, we want to define the brief. That's a bit more linear because we don't really want to start until we've defined the brief and what we're actually delivering. And then once we know and have got a plan, and we make sure we have a really good plan in place. We do really good detailed pre-production meetings to make sure that that hour to 2 hours spent up front, it's so much more valuable than finding something down the track that doesn't happen. And so we do that. We do a lot of planning, and then what we can do is concurrently build. So we can design while if we know there's a back end, maybe the back end started the structure design. We can also film content. You know, we're doing a project at the moment for University of Auckland, and it's probably about 10 weeks or so. But we've been designing, developing, and doing 3D assets all at the same time. Linear can make it easier, but, you know, I mean, essentially it doesn't need to work like that. So it really depends. We've done VR experiences that take 6 to 8 months. The game that I mentioned we're working on, that's an 18-month project, you know. So it really depends. And it's not necessarily the only thing we're working on either. So it's not like solid 2 months.
No, that's great. And in fact, I was just thinking there's just so many opportunities I can see in the education space, being an educator myself. So I was just wondering if you are doing something in the education space, and you just mentioned you're working for University of Auckland.
Yeah, I mean, that one is it's probably less education than it is, I guess, student awareness and recruitment. But there is so much opportunity. I mean, even if you looked at the Easter egg hunt and what you could do with just, you know, content for kids. I mean, it's something more of a passion for me is content for kids is definitely something. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of funding in the space, and, you know.
So is that where you want to go?
Oh, look, I just, you know, for me, if I can entertain and educate kids, that would always, so we call it edutainment, you know, because I think the thing is with kids as well, education is through entertainment. So it doesn't have to be specifically, oh, I'm actually teaching you this. You can do it through entertainment. A lot of programs have great values coming in just by watching, you know.
That's right. I mean, just learning without knowing that you're learning even.
Well, that's how they do it. And actually, so do we. So it's not just for kids, right? Like, you know, we were talking about the butterflies experience that we did earlier in the couple of years ago for Auckland Museum. And one of the things that we did in there, in the digital garden wall that we created, and it's subtle, but you get to see the life cycle of a butterfly in there. There's the pupa stage, the caterpillar, and then the butterflies themselves. And in the kiosk where you got to design and color the butterfly, it talks to you about iridescence and their protection layer. The way butterflies fly differently, you know, and all of that stuff just coming through a really fun experience. But hey, I've come out and gone, I know this fact, you know.
And it's a modern way, and the younger generation these days are so into all these devices that it's a lot of fun for them. Thank you.
No worries.
Cool. I think Justin had a question. You want to go for it?
Yeah, I've done a bit of work on some devices that are kind of Internet of Things added onto phones for like kind of augmented reality. I was wondering, like, how do you find the accuracy of the kind of AR core and the actual phone itself affects like the experience, and especially when you're trying to do the programming and stuff like that? That's kind of what I was interested in.
Yeah,
'Cause
sure. I'm a lot less technical, so I probably won't be able to. I'm more creative, high-level planning strategy.
Yeah.
But I do know that with the web augmented reality stuff, apps are easier to kind of positioning wise. I know that was definitely easier in the app than it has been in the web-based content. We're working a lot with ARKit and Core, and all I know that the guys are trying to always work on, and kind of is just to try and perfect that a bit more. And I think that's because they're now becoming native, which means that you don't need to. So the thing with an app is basically you build it in something, then you launch it through an app, and it should behave like you want it to, because you've controlled a lot of that. Whereas when you go into more browser-based stuff, I guess it's probably less, sort of less dependent on exactly how you set it out. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question. I'm probably not technical enough to answer your question properly.
Yeah, no, that's good. Like for a non-technical person, like one thing one thing I've noticed is that like there's the core, like you'll be developing something and then the phone companies will change what's going on. So you've actually like I've seen like the programming guys having to do lots and lots of work when that kind of stuff happens.
Look, I mean, that's just tech in general. We've been doing this for 17 years, and I have to say, web was exciting and great until browser upon browser upon browser came along. And initially the expectation was that it will work across all browsers. That's changed a lot just in the last couple of years, but actually been really recent, because for ages, because there were so many different versions of browsers. I mean, there's browsers, then there were phone, and then, so I actually really have loved working in VR, because VR, you go, well, this is the headset I'm doing it for. That's it. I don't have to open 10 browsers to test it. But yeah, we are finding a little bit of that with phones. It happened with Facebook when we're doing social. Every few months, Facebook would change an algorithm, an API change. And it's really tricky to make sure that because we're always on the cusp of technology. So we're doing things that are fresh and new. 3 months later, they've changed their thing, and it's massive. It's not like you just go in and change one piece of code. You should the whole thing.
Do you find it easier for the models to actually work better when it's done indoors or outdoors? Because I know with the GPSs on the phones aren't very accurate. So if you're using the
Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei one, it was really interesting, and that's why I said go on a sunny day, because what we found, and it might be a bit better now, but the compass wasn't great on the just on the device. The compass wasn't great, and so while our thing was location based, you didn't have to stand a certain way to look at it. But obviously, like the Rangitoto example, if you're looking at Rangitoto, that was the best way to experience it. However, on a cloudier day, sometimes you'd find that it would just place you slightly differently. What I have found really, really interesting, because I showcase it a lot and I've got it on my phone, and I just use a cheat to walk it, if that makes sense, because you have to be on location, but we built a cheat so I can showcase it to people. And I can run it basically in an office or whatever. But I found it really, really interesting when I run it outside of being at Bastion Point, whether I'm in Auckland or LA or wherever, and just going, oh, is that actual direction that it's showing me in? Because every time I run it, it's interesting to see, is that actually north? And how many times I've run it in the office and gone, oh yeah, that is actually where it is. But if it's not a very nice day, it's so variable, so the location things are really interesting.
It's all about getting good datums, isn't it? To get your model overlaid on where you are. And I think that really improves the user experience, and because it seems so much more real and less flaky. I've noticed when you can get that right.
You'll notice if you do have time and do the Easter egg hunt, you're gonna have to draw some Easter eggs. Or if you've got
my kids will love that.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's the thing, is we left it up because we thought it's actually quite fun. What we did, because Google Cloud Vision was so cool, is it actually recognizes. It'll recognize an egg. It'll recognize like a Cadbury cream egg, anything that's got that sort of shape, it'll recognize. So, I mean, draw your Easter eggs, that'll be fun. But if you don't want to, you can just find something egg-shaped. But you'll find on that, you'll notice that the bunny, the animation doesn't always sit centered, that there will be a bit of movement. And it's always interesting to see where, like on some of the older devices, the bunny was off, you know, or the animation was off a little bit. So that is definitely one thing. But I think the thing is also just people, expectations, right? Because I think part of the thing is also, even with new tech, there's an expectation that it'll work perfectly for everyone. And so some of that expectation is people trial stuff and know that stuff doesn't always work straight away, especially if you're a new adopter. Is good to have as well.
Awesome.
Cool, thanks.
Carl, did you have a
No
question?
worries.
Yes, I also have a question. Hey, Sam, I was just wondering what kind of software do you actually use for rendering your content? Because you were saying, oh, on the phone it works very well, but if you go a little bit bigger, movie style, then I guess there are a little bit different levels on what you use and
Yeah, I mean, look, we use so many different, you know, there's a typical Adobe suite, depending on what we're doing.
Right.
We edit a lot of content, then bring it back. We actually use game engines quite a lot for our content as well, just the nature of being able to create those worlds. Unreal, Unity, Unreal more so now. The butterflies example, which I know I didn't showcase, but talking about that example, even though it was on one digital wall, if you imagine a flat wall that was projected on, what we actually created was a full world, a 360 world in Unreal. And all we did is we moved the camera to take that shot. What was great about creating that world is that if we decided that we didn't like that plant there, we could either shift the plant or we could shift our camera slightly to get a better angle. And so there's all, honestly, it really depends. You know, we create 3D content in Maya. We do textures. Sometimes we don't use the 3D content online, like actual 3D content. We'll do sort of JPEG versions of them. So it really depends on what the experience is, how it needs to load, what it's working on, all of that stuff.
Right, and do you actually do that all in-house? Like how many developers do you actually have in the house, or how many do you actually outsource?
Yeah, we do. We've got a thing at Method that everyone wears maybe 2 or 10 hats, maybe 2 or 3 hats.
How many people are you actually?
I think at the moment there's 13 of us. And so, yeah, we've got, you know, the great thing is that we've got, so an example is our 3D modeler is also our motion graphics person, and a great video editor. But this is the thing, is we find these amazing people who've got a couple of great skills, because I guess what we do is so platform agnostic. For us, it's just about telling the story, and that story might be a video that needs to be edited. So we'll usually video is probably the only thing we outsource the actual shoot, but we do everything else on the video. We do the plan, the pre-prod, the production of it, all of that, and then edit it in-house. Right. And that's just the nature of the people that we've got.
And another question, the open source individual puzzle tool, I call it now, is that then also browser-based, or are you going to have that on an app? What you were talking about?
That's going to be an app. That'll be an app-based.
Get the puzzles in. And is that like customizable, or like you would?
Are you talking about the tour? Are you talking about the augmented reality tour?
Yes. So to create your own tool, you were saying that you are thinking about that.
We've already in development. We just we need more funding. But essentially, the idea is, if you think of TripAdvisor, and how TripAdvisor works with content, this is you have one app, and you can tap into an augmented reality tour anywhere around the world. This is when it gets to that stage, it's got content. And the idea is that actually a tourism operator can come in and create their own content. We would create some library content for you to drop in there, but otherwise you can load all your own. So, you saw the image, copy, all of that's really easy. A lot of people can create their own 360 video these days as well. So we'd create a platform that lets you do that. But of course, if you want the bells and whistles and the eruptions of volcanoes, then we're here to help you create the content as well. But that would be app-based. It's just the nature of the sort of content we're talking about.
So you could use, I worked for Rico earlier, so you could use the theater, take a picture, 360, and then load that into that.
basically, we've allowed for certain pieces of content to be uploaded. You can load in whatever you like for your tour. It can, it doesn't have to be it could just be a text and image-based tour. But you put your hotspots down, you plot it all out, and you launch it, and it's there. Yeah.
And the idea that, just to understand the business model behind it, the idea would be that people pay for the app. Like, if do you have different subscriptions on that, or would you pay for the tour, or like how would you build the business model around it? I think that's very important for our listeners to actually understand, like, how do you actually make some money out of it?
Yeah, sure. So the way we make money out of it is essentially charging the tourism operators. It's a SaaS platform. They come in, they've got different tiers. If you want the basic, that's tier 1, up to a customized version where you want the bells and whistles, and you get us involved. So it's a SaaS model for us. For the tourism operator, I guess the interesting thing is that, they're already looking at ways, and of course at the moment, looking at ways of engaging new audiences. How can they keep people interested? How can their brand do something different and exciting over someone else's? So for them, it's really up to them how they want to market it. I imagine there'd be a lot of free apps and basic tours, and then a version where they charge. I think this is a thing. It goes back to the mentality thing. I'd be more than happy to pay $3 to $5 for a tour where I self-guided. I don't have to go on a tour group. Sounds amazing to me. However, there's a mental kind of thing when people pay money through apps. $3 suddenly becomes $50 in their mind. You know what it's
really
like.
Strange because apps, like, you have this threshold of paying money for them. Like, it feels odd. Web content usually should be free. That's
and
how
so
we got brought into this digital space. So it's really interesting. That's why I asked that question. Like, how do you actually then? Because I guess for the users, it's not necessarily that you charge them that much, but it's the operators, which is great because you can also excite people before they go on their tour. Probably, especially now, if you can't go anywhere, you could then actually have that tour. You would then actually like to pay for it because you're sitting at home. And then
so it's really up to the tourism operator. And if you, if I go back to the Ngāti Whātua example, while that was a free app, what we were really promoting was that walking tour, the behind the scenes walking tour. And so in the app itself, there's like a couple of sales points. Go to the site, go and book it at the kiosk. They did a little coffee kiosk. And so the idea is we've given them a little bit of a snippet, a little bit of a teaser into what you could experience. So the same could happen with this. You've given them 1 to 5 stories, but to get more detail in, because you love this so much, go on an actual tour with someone, or come to our location, come inside. Maybe this is outside around the grounds, So there's so many different ways they can do that. But I think obviously from our point of view, it's B2B. So our customer is essentially the operators. But you can imagine the sort of thing this could do for those smaller tourism operators that wouldn't have the money to do spend thousands of dollars marketing or doing anything like this. And that's where we'd actually found the gap. It was when people were coming to us going, can we do this? And we're like, well, it's going to cost you X, and it's in excess of around 100,000 to do one of those apps. It's like, that's just not feasible for everyone. Yet if we created a system, because a lot of this is very similar, and they paid a monthly license fee, it'll be nowhere near that amount. And so you've got small Indigenous groups being able to do, tell their stories in different ways, and just bringing that to life. And I just love that idea that you can go anywhere around the world and be able to hopefully find a tour near you because someone's been able to create that, Wow. It's what we all seek anyway, I think, when we're traveling, is what are those little nuggets of information we can find,
Is there any other question? I would have one more. Okay, I'm just going to ask it. How do you actually see like a method within the next, it's really difficult to predict. That's the interesting thing. I'm working on IoT as well. As you said, like, things are changing so quickly and so rapidly. Now we're going to web-based, which is great. I would like to see that a bit more because apps are just actually annoying. And as you said, like, Apple needs to approve them. We have exactly the same problem. It takes you up to a week until Apple approves it, and then maybe they don't like the content or whatever. So how do you see your business, and what would you like to do, and where would you like to bring your business in the next, let's say 2 years and then a 5 year? because it's
Yeah.
so fast moving that I think it's difficult to go into a 10-year.
Oh, look, and I mean, I guess our thing was always about human engagement. I guess that engagement and how you do that has changed over the last 17 years at least, if not, you know, more. So when we started, digital was essentially web. That was it. That was your way to get more digital content. There were banners and emails starting to happen. Then we actually did a lot of Connect. Do you remember Xbox Connect? We did a lot of hacks using that for experiential stuff, big screen, digital content, kiosks, museum exhibitions. You know, so I think for us, storytelling is always key. And so that's always going to be what we do. Our focus is basically, we're in the creative tech space. We create stories for any organization, and our method and platform is agnostic, because it's however best to tell that story. And sometimes we'll turn around and go, you know, we do this a lot as people come to us and go, I want to, Pokemon was a great case and example. People coming to us going, I want to do a augmented reality treasure hunt. You know, we had burger companies saying that to us, and we're like, can we take a step back? Why are you doing this? Because all you're doing is jumping on the bandwagon. So we do a lot of that workshopping up front, going, what are the objectives? And we've turned away a lot of, as in we've turned around a lot of briefs that started with, I want to do a VR experience, I want to do an AR experience, to actually, this is what you need to do, because this isn't going to get your audience. And so we're not afraid to challenge our clients. More and more though, what I think everyone's seen is a lot more digital content, but more organic. You know, I think the thing is, it's going to become, I think our thing is, we don't want tech to stand out. We don't want you to think about the tech afterwards. We want you to be left with the story, the experience that you had. The Ngāti Whātua experience, we want you to be left with some of these great legends and stories. You've almost forgotten, and because the tech was so seamless, you've almost forgotten that you were in augmented reality using this, because actually what came through it was story that you then go and talk about. So, and I think one of the things that actually has come out really strongly through lockdown, one of the things we were focusing on, very international focus this year as well, is location-based experiences. So all about the physical and the digital. And I think one great thing that's come out of lockdown is that everyone's really been craving the social aspect, you know, not necessarily in crowds, but just missing people. And so I love that. And so for us, the whole physical and digital is even more important. How can you connect people to place, have something in place? And that's why I love the idea of these apps that link into physical stuff, rather than just staring at your phone for hours on end. What can we do to link you back into the real world? You know, everything's got its place, I suppose. Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you. I don't know if there are any more questions. We are 1 minute over time, but we started late. I don't know if anyone else has a question.
Just a quick comment, Sam, that I totally agree with you that the technology is only an enabler for the experience. At the end of the day, it's the experience that's important. Yeah. Excellent.
Absolutely.
I think Graham French has some question, does he? No.
Cool.
Okay. Then, yeah, we wrap it up. And thank you so much for giving this talk today, Sam. That was awesome. And yeah, everyone else can revisit as well on our website this talk online in the video. It's going to be on YouTube as well, if you agree to that. And yeah, that was really, really nice. And just head over to our website as well, become a member. And yeah, just let's keep innovation coming in New Zealand and push forward. And